The Chief of Police and Director of Regulatory Services chime in on the town's proposed problem property ordinances, plus one more day to vote for Barnstable United and new updates from Growth Management. Details on this episode of Barnstable Today. It's Tuesday, December 11th, 2012. I'm Sarah Colvin. Barnstable United Elementary is working to receive a grant from Clorox. The school is currently number 4 in the running for a Clorox Power a Bright Future grant. The school would use the funds to improve its outdoor space and create a classroom outdoors and performance space similar to the high school's Cobb Astro Park. Voting ends on Thursday. Head to powerabrightfuture.clorox.com to cast your vote. Well, hundreds of Barnstable residents showed up at Town Hall for last week's Town Council meeting. Many took to the podium to speak in regards to the problem property ordinances that are proposed. Chief of Police Paul McDonald says just bringing the issue forward will have an impact across town.
It is going to move forward, but no matter what happens to it, what has happened, all the media coverage has brought this attention to everyone in the town, and I think at the very least, even if it doesn't pass, it's going to have a dramatic effect on the way the landlords do their business in the coming season. You know, we've already had inquiries from real estate individuals who have specialized in bringing kids from different countries in to work, and a lot of times, you know, that was the root of the problem. Those houses were overcrowded. They came here, they worked very, very hard, they worked 2 or 3 jobs, but then they would party all night, affecting the quality of life for everyone living in that neighborhood. So I think the word's already getting out there, so I think it is good. I think eventually it will pass, but even if it doesn't pass, it's already going to happen.
Many residents were concerned about the scope of the ordinances and how they would affect each of Barnstable's villages and homeowners. Chief McDonald stresses that the number of properties that will be affected is actually rather small.
We did some research last week going back and try to identify how many houses would actually affect. And really, you know, when you look at it, it's only going to affect probably in the course of a 12-month period a handful of homes. You know, maybe 4 or 5 different residents.
The chief says the police ordinance change is intended to target serious crimes.
And there's a little phrase in there. You know, if you're the victim of a crime, that does not count. And I think a couple of scenarios they brought up, if someone was involved in some type of domestic situation, you know, and it happens 2 or 3 times course of the year, is that person going to be fined? Well, no, absolutely not, because that person is a victim of a crime. That's not the flavor of what this ordinance is trying to do.
Chief McDonald says simple repeat calls will not trigger the ordinance's regulations.
More of you have a particular residence where the crime is originating from that residence, that home, that residence, the individuals in there are causing it, you know, and the one I'm thinking about most that causes the biggest problem, you know, once we do a search warrant on a house for some type of distribution, trafficking of narcotics, and some houses we've done search warrants 2, 3, and 4 times at the exact same residence, that would fit the category. That is a great example.
Director of Regulatory Services Tom Geiler is also in support of the changes to Town Code.
If you back up a little bit and look at the history of the past couple of years with respect to the community's discussions, the large groups that met with the Hyannis Civic Association, and then the expansion of that to discussions with other civic associations, and trying to identify those problems that were the most concerning to neighborhood residents. And that resulted in these 4 separate articles that had been brought before the council to provide the ability of eliminating some of these chronic issues that just terrorize the neighborhood, that make it very difficult for neighbors to coexist when there's varying differences of opinion about how property is maintained and how property is managed, and the battle between those individuals that work around the yard and so forth in the daytime and sleep at night, and those people that work at night and want to party when they come home at 2 in the morning. Those and the maintenance issues as well. It has a significant impact on the value of people's homes when there is blighted home in proximity. So and given the difficulty of trying to sell houses over the last 3 or 4 years, this has kind of heightened the concern. So what we're looking for is to try to provide the services that the citizens are asking for.
Speaking on this morning's edition of Barnstable This Morning, Geiler further outlines the ordinance changes.
In the 4 different areas, that first one was the tool that allowed the town to recoup some of the costs and so forth. That's the one that the council spent the most time on the other night. The others are, I think, probably have a lot more support, but they deal with just adding some language to identify the types of expectations with respect to maintenance and the neighborhood coexistence. They tighten up some of the language in terms of changing the age recognition. The current regulations recognize only those individuals that are over 22, when in fact many of the problem issues have been people as young as 18 that are renting properties in the summer, particularly as group rentals, and causing late night parties and other activities that are less than ideal in a neighborhood. And then the 501 just dealt with tightening up the language in terms of the definitions and the rental property agreements. So I'm sure there will be continuing discussion, and there are always people that are very concerned about property rights and ensuring that the town isn't going too far. And that's an appropriate thing to do. What's hopefully going to happen is everybody's going to kind of agree that that we need to do something, and exactly what that something is, hoping is worked out over the next month or so.
Geiler says the Regulatory Services staff fields a large number of calls from concerned residents with issues regarding neighborhood things like blight, noise, police, and other calls. Geiler says the Citizens Resource Line is a plus and feels ordinance changes will help provide more answers.
Resource Line certainly has kind of heightened the number of calls and concerns. And it's very, very difficult when somebody has got something that is very unusual going on in their neighborhood, and it's impacting the quality of life of many of those residents, and they're asking the town for some help, and the town has to tell them that we don't have any rules to cover that. So a good part of this is to add those rules and to have tools to be able to go in and resolve the issues when it rises to that level.
Barnstable Town Council began public hearings on the 5 proposed ordinances at last week's meeting. Councilors agreed that more discussion, changes, and information are all necessary. The conversation will continue at the Council's January 17th meeting. But until then, you can learn more and join the conversation online at barnstableiforum.com. Barnstable wants to know what you think, and our leaders are listening. Log on to barnstableiforum.com to share your thoughts on the proposed problem property ordinances today. Well, Growth Management Department is working to increase communication and keep residents and interested citizens up to date and informed about the department's activities. The second in a new series of weekly updates was posted on the town's website yesterday. This week's update outlines the climate change adaptation study that's going on. GMD staff worked with MIT and Wacoit Bay Estuarine Research Reserve staff on that project. The focus now is to interview town staff, first responders, and residents to hear their ideas and concerns regarding climate change. Growth Management also explored the complex issue of parking in downtown Hyannis. You can view that update online at town.barnstable.ma.us. Just click through the Growth Management Department. With Barnstable Today, I'm Sarah Colvin.